You're now listening to an archive episode of Or So I Thought, back when the podcast went by a different name. I really hope you enjoy it, and please make sure to listen to our new stuff. So, after you're done here, just scroll up, pick a new episode, and press play.
Girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Man, that song is so catchy. Don't worry. I promise that's all the singing I'll do for the rest of this episode. Maybe. But don't you love Ed Sheeran? It's like everything he does is genius, simple, and catchy. In case you haven't noticed, I use a lot of music references. I'm not a musician if you couldn't already tell. I'm not even a wannabe musician, but I'm always listening to music, and I'm intrigued by how it's made. So I love hearing artists talk about how they make their songs. Whether you actually like Ed Sheeran's music or not, there is one thing. No one can debate that he's one of the most successful songwriters of the past 5 years. Not just with his own songs, but he's written a couple of Justin Bieber's biggest songs from last year, too. My question when I encounter something great is always, how did this person get so good? So, I was watching an interview that Ed Sheeran had at the YouTube headquarters in London, and he had this advice to artists that I think applies to anyone doing creative work. For you designers, painters, writers, social media managers, architects, all of you, listen to this. I think you'll learn from this.
It literally came from writing a song a day or 2 songs a day or 5 songs a day and just getting all these songs out of me, doing a million gigs, sometimes 3 gigs a day. We did 6 gigs a day one year at Glastonbury. But I think you view it as a dirty tap. When you switch a dirty tap on, it's going to flow shit water out for a substantial amount of time, and then clean water is going to start flowing, and now and then you'll get a bit of shit, but as long as it gets out of you, it's fine. So with songs, you're going to write shit songs at the beginning. My songs were terrible. My raps were terrible. Like, I listened to it the other day, it was awful, but I got it out of me, and the more and more you write, the more and more you experience, and then you start flowing clean water, and songs start getting better and better and better, and when you're on a good streak, you're writing good songs, now and then you're going to write a shit song, and that song is out of you and you can move on. And it's the same with gigs. Like, you will always play bad gigs at the beginning. That's what you need to do. And then the more gigs you do, the better you'll get. Now and then you'll have a shit gig, but that's all right because you've got it out of you and you've experienced it. So I just say the more and more you can do, you put in your 10,000 hours, write as many songs as possible, gig as much as possible. Always be nice.
I love that analogy. That creative work is kind of like a faucet that only pours out dirty water at first. It actually reminds me of a chapter in Austin Kleon's Show Your Work book. He quotes Sturgeon's Law, which basically boils down to this: 90% of everything is crap. The full excerpt from Austin Kleon's book reads like this: Don't worry about everything you post being perfect. Science fiction writer Theodore Sturgeon once said that 90% of everything is crap. The same is true of our own work. The trouble is, we don't always know what's good and what sucks. That's why it's important to get things in front of others and see how they react.
Message.
So, following that logic, we can get to the following example. Let's say you're going to make 1,000 paintings over your lifetime. That means that only 10%, meaning 100 of them, will be good or decent or have some type of redeeming value. You know what I mean? Something that's not crap. Only 100 of those. Sounds depressing, I know. But check this out. This ratio applies to everyone. Even Leonardo da Vinci would show this ratio if we were really to look at everything he ever made, from birth to death. But here's the caveat. This is usually front-loaded. When you start out, pretty much all of it is crap, right? So for you to get to the 10% that's awesome or decent, you'll have to get through a major part of all those 900 crappy paintings first. His advice for us: why not get those crappy ones out of the way as soon as possible? When you're starting out, work fast and do a lot of work. Work a lot. Don't let yourself be discouraged. It sounds like common sense, but almost no one follows this advice. That's why the pros keep having to remind us. Here's one of my favorite clips about a person in my field, radio journalism. And he's actually probably the greatest of all time by now. His name is Ira Glass, from this little show called This American Life. Maybe you've heard of it? This interview was recorded for Current TV. Here's Ira Glass.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, like, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap, that for the first couple of years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you. You know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste. They could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions.
It's all about testing and experimenting at first. Finding how to communicate all this awesome taste you have with the limited tools you have. There's this story from the book Art and Fear. It goes like this. A pottery teacher split her class into two halves. To the first half, she said, "You will spend the semester studying pottery, planning, designing, and creating your perfect pot. At the end of the semester, there will be a competition to see whose pot is the best." Now, to the other half, she said, "You will spend your semester making lots of pots. Your grade will be based on the number of completed pots you finish. At the end of the semester, you'll also have the opportunity to enter your best pot into a competition." So, of course, the first half of the class threw themselves into their research, their planning and design. Then they set about creating their one perfect pot for the competition. Their grade depended on quality. Now, the second half of the class immediately grabbed fistfuls of clay and started churning out pots. They made big ones, small ones, simple ones, and elaborate ones. At the end of the class, both halves were invited to enter their most perfect pot into the competition. Once the votes were counted, all of the best pots actually came from the students that were tasked with quantity. The practice they gained made them significantly better potters than the planners on a quest for one single perfect pot. You see, pots and songs and podcast episodes even, and businesses, well, they're like software. You only learn through iteration, through quick repetition. You beta test that sucker until you get closer to your vision. I argue that society needs you to risk embarrassment with the things you make. That's really the only way that the human species advances, through a bunch of small mistakes made by individuals, which eventually benefit the group as a whole. Your life and your career are the same as society, really, but just on a smaller scale. You allow yourself to make a bunch of small mistakes each day, to endure small amounts of pain so that your life as a whole can benefit in the long term. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, has a theory that he lives by. He says, if the first version of your product doesn't embarrass you, then you've released it too late. You can't wait until it seems perfect to put it out there, because you don't know what the market really wants until they get their hands on it. Did you know that bubble wrap was originally designed as a form of textured wallpaper for your home? The inventors thought it would make them rich, but that idea didn't take off, obviously. Years later, a computer company needed to find material to protect the fragile computer parts that they shipped. Enter bubble wrap. And then now, the inventors got rich off of their idea. The market will tell you what they want with their wallets. Show it to them early and often. I've settled on a simple evaluation for whether my idea is finished or not. Number 1, am I making this with generous intention? In other words, am I looking to give it value through informing, entertaining, motivating, or just simply solving a problem? If yes, proceed to number 2. Step 2, the final test. Does this thing have a main idea or concept that it's trying to communicate? If yes, then it's ready. Ship it, show it, or put it away in your portfolio and move on to the next. That's my approach to what I do and to this podcast. My goal isn't to make the perfect episode now. My goal is to create as much as I need to create so that I can make the best damn episode you've ever heard in the year 2022. As Gary Vee says, I'm playing the long game. It works. And it's really the only way to filter through the crappy 90% to get to the 10% that's actually good. In the spirit of beta testing and doing a lot of work early on to master our craft, I'm going to be releasing shorter episodes more often. So what I'm thinking is for the rest of June of this month, I'm going to be doing 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They'll be shorter, but they're going to help me learn a lot in a short amount of time. So please keep tuning in. Let me know what you feel about the episodes, how you like, and if you want to share anything, please go ahead. It'd be a huge, huge favor to me. I'm Alex Cespedes. Thanks for listening to The Project Book.